Okay. And then
Advanced philosophy memes. We have made good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We have made good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts. And Sarah, keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else from Great Memes. Philosophy memes. We have made good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes.
yeah, what's up? Oh, look at this background. This is great. Raf, I think contributed this background. This is pretty nice. I like how it's going. Can someone let me know, by the way, is my audio better? Because yesterday I had poor audio, and I just want to make sure
You sound
Yeah, you
great.
sound great, buddy.
we started off on a good start. Okay, that's good. Let me like bring this a little closer. Hi, how's it going? Let me just do a little solo here. Hey, girl, how are you?
Hi, everyone. How do I sound?
American Time Machine, ladies and gentlemen. American Time Machine. This is Kurt.
It's great to see you. How was my audio today?
I like it. What do you guys think? Is it good?
Fine.
Better than
Yeah.
normal?
Sounds
Yeah, some-
significantly nice.
It sounds like an SM58 microphone from Sure.
It is
Man.
a Shure SM58. Correct. Yeah, beautiful.
Sure as the stars are in the sky, looking down at us. Okay, so I'm in Dresden. This is a statue in front of St. Martin Luther's Cathedral. It looks like pretty hardcore. Any thoughts? What do you have? Any immediate thoughts when you see this?
I got a story about Dresden.
Looks
Really?
I think it looks like they
Yeah.
want your soul.
I know, right? Yeah. Okay, what's the story about Dresden? Let's start with that. Tell me the story. That's
So
cool.
back after I graduated college, me and my friends, we were trying online dating. And so like and online dating has never been like advantageous for men even since it was invented. We were
Except
like,
for me.
Yeah, I was going to say.
sure, yeah.
I met my
But
wife.
Jack did pretty good.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I've gone on a few dates, but the thing is, like, there's always been the discrepancy of you need essentially to just, well, like go fishing, I guess, and just like message like a bunch of women. And
Yeah.
it was my friend was like, dude, you can't like do well thought out messages and actually, care about people. What you have to do is you have to Dresden bomb their inboxes. You just have to message 100 women you don't care about, and then just wait for like 3 or 4 to get back to you, and then you have all the selections in your hand. So that method,
That's
it was
true.
called Dresden bombing, and so that's how I learned about Dresden.
Okay. That's pretty brutal. That's fair though.
Yeah, that's not how online dating works these days, I don't think. Now it's all like very
I
streamlined.
don't do it.
and-
I don't do it anymore.
So I'm like pretty much firmly against online dating, except I think that I understand and sympathize and have done the sitting on the toilet, swiping fast, and then just attacking people with mean messages. I think it's like, I know you shouldn't do that, but the fact that you can like, I mean, let's be real, like the fact that that app is there so that you can get into people's vulnerabilities and like you can completely manipulate and be rude and like make jokes.
Honestly, though, I was a freaking I was a psycho about like online dating. I mean, I didn't even mean to do it this way. It's just like when I first started getting into Facebook groups, I got into some really, really like seedy groups. And I think people let you into
Yeah.
these groups when they get the vibe that you don't judge. You know, you're willing to like lend an open ear. You're willing to be a little sympathetic, maybe even empathetic. And when you get into
Yeah.
these groups, there's like a lot of girls there just talking.
Never
about,
judge, always test.
yeah, they're just talking about their shit, and then you're like, oh, okay, I relate to that, and then you get close with people like that. But I don't think that's optimal. I don't think
I'm
think that's a
trying.
good way
I'm
Yo,
trying to get a bunch of girls right now that I know into these groups on Facebook that are like different towns in America that are for only women allowed in these groups, and like I'm pretty sure they care about like whether you would biologically. I think they're like turfs only, but they're like saying if you're dating the same guy in that town. And it's like a way for them to figure out if like they're dating the same guy. And there's like hundreds of these groups where they're like in this town or that town. Like, have you seen this guy's face before? Is he like married? And then these groups are like, they're like, oh my God, dude. Yeah, he runs a trucker stop. He's a trucker and he's got like 3 wives and 3 families. And like each, yeah. Like this is all over America, but it's going to be harder and harder to hide that if like, you know.
Let me tell you really quick. I got to tell you guys the story. I got really lucky with my wife, how I met her. So I was totally against online dating, completely against it, and I wouldn't do it. I was like, you meet people in person. That's how you're supposed to do it. Don't be a pussy. Don't, you know. But I was like, you know what? I kind of feel like I've unlocked like the woman's mind a little bit, right? So like, let's try Tinder. Let's have some fun. So I thought I'd maybe have some fun. I was ready to play. And so I met this girl and I started talking to her and I was like, she actually is pretty cool. So I kept talking to her and she was like one of the first people that even talked back to me. Like I'm pathetic in a way because I married her, but that's fast forwarding. So anyway, so what happened is that we had plans to meet up on Friday, and I was like, okay, like 7 o'clock or so. So 6:30 comes around, and I give her a call, and I was like, okay, so do you want to meet up about 7, like we said? And she was like, I'm sorry, I'm in a movie, and I flipped out. I was like, what are you trying to say? Like you double dated tonight or something? Like what kind of girl are you? Like what's the matter with you? And I hung up on her. Like, is that how you Tinder? You know, and I just totally assumed right away. And then I was talking to my dad, and I was like, wait a second, like, what if there's a reasonable explanation?
You spoke to your dad about this?
Blew this girl up. Yeah, I was talking to my dad. Like
cute.
after it, I was like talking shit on this girl. I was like, this is what Tinder's like, you know?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, unbelievable. The first person I want to meet up with, she seemed cool, and she like hosted 2 dates in the same night.
Yo,
It's
what
horrible.
state is this? What state did this take place in? Like what area?
In Utah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Salt
okay,
Lake City. Yeah. So
Because a
I'm
date
like,
in
oh
Utah
my
doesn't
God.
mean the same thing, and you know it's going to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
chill.
yeah.
So you can do that.
Because in New York, it
So
would
then
be
I
like,
thought about it. I was like, what? Wait, wasn't she Mormon? Like, and I was like, dude, what if I'm wrong about this girl? So I called her back, and my dad's like, couldn't hurt. Maybe you were wrong, but she sounds like she's probably a slut. Like, he didn't say that, but he said that. You know what I mean?
She's American.
And I was like, all right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I called her, and I was like, hey, I might have been too hasty. And so
Holy
the rest
shit.
is history. She gave me another chance, and we met up.
well, I
That's
mean,
pretty
it's
basic.
Utah, so the pickings are already slim. I would be a little more forgiving too, you know, if I were.
The
if I
point
were-
I didn't get is what kind of movie was she in then? Or what was the explanation ultimately? I didn't catch that.
Oh, so she was with her family. Of course she was, because she was Mormon and they're really like family oriented. So they were
Yeah.
at a movie together. Her actual family, like her extended family. She was with cousins,
Jesus
and
Christ,
yeah, I just
man.
totally I assumed and didn't even give her a chance to explain. I just hung up on her.
This
and
is
like
this, and this
assumed
is
all
this
of
is
the
after
worst
you.
possible things.
This is after you unlocked the woman's mind, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I was such a pro at it.
And then she's like, "Oh my God, this poor guy. He's so vulnerable and he's so sensitive, and his
Yeah, yeah,
ego is so
exactly.
he's a little brittle that
so
he's
sweet.
worried."
He wears his heart on his sleeve.
He's
Like,
worried.
I have nothing to be scared of.
You're like, you know, you may have seen another man. Don't break my heart. I hate you. Like that's as quick. Like as I might be in love with you now. I hate you. Like that's the kind of it's good.
That's the way a musician would think. That's how they act. Like lead singers to bands and shit. That's exactly.
Well,
how they
I
act.
was like playing in music not long before that, so
There you go. So
I
know?
I
Drama.
I think online dating though is weird because it's become a thing where it's used mostly for people that are trying to have sex right away. And so I was in South America where a lot of people were Catholic, and that wasn't the way it was used. And it was really fascinating that it was used literally to meet people and have dates. So Ian Crossland, when we were going to Peru and Argentina and things like that, we would constantly go, like, he would find through Tinder people and we would meet them in the parks, and they'd be like just friendly, cordial interactions with people. And it was so startlingly different. I think it also matters where in the world you are. And it's interesting. I think even the apps are marketed differently for that purpose. They're like, hey, you know, you can use this for other purposes. But in America, it really has become kind of this commodification of sex, right? Like, I mean, it's hitting the lowest common denominator of
Yeah, but that's not going to be sustainable. I mean, like, it's like unfortunately, I don't mean to put it such a crude way, but it is supply and demand. Once like the supply outweighs the demand, it just turns into like, okay, well, we're done with this for a little bit. And it just kind of tapers off, you know, and eventually like people get horny again. It's like, oh yeah, we suddenly care about this a lot more collectively.
Yeah, I feel like though that's the sad thing. 'Cause, like, social media to meet people to actually.
But then
like,
I didn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't be just for that. Like, it could hooking up like in a park to like play frisbee or something like that is totally. Why is Tinder not marketed for that purpose? Because that would be way more practical, and a lot of people could use that, especially after the quarantine, right? Like,
It
it
probably
seems
would
like,
create a lot more lasting, non-toxic relationships.
yeah, I'm sorry. It's like, is that too obvious? Like, it just seems like there's a reason why it's not doing that, because it was that way in South America, in Catholic countries. I noticed it a lot. That was, you know, how people use the app. And in San
Austria is
Francisco,
supposedly Catholic. Other parts would be Muslim. I don't think anyone's using it that way here.
yeah, I imagine. No, I don't think anyone's using Tinder in Muslim countries. Is that a thing? I wonder about that. Maybe it is, but like, I would imagine there it would also be like a date kind of
No,
thing.
I mean, you guys kind of maybe you just inadvertently
Well, you
pointed to
talk
an
to their dad instead.
maybe you inadvertently pointed to an opportunity here, right? If these countries are lacking like frameworks, because there is a formula to it, right? To be able to get a community together and to start an event over like, I don't know, some social media platform, send invites, and then people show up, and you could use that as like a networking event. I don't know. Do some people just not know how to do that in certain places? Like,
Jack's got a point though. We need like the Andrew Tate dating app where you just talk to some dad of someone who like treats their daughter and wife like property. Like,
Right.
where's that
That's
at?
how-
What's
that's
the deal with
Muslim
that?
Tinder.
Yeah, where's that
Malinger.
at? Does that exist? Is that a thing already? Because that seems like
Well,
that's
I
money
mean,
you're making.
if you go to a third
We,
world
we
country,
might have
I'm
just
sure you could
created
find,
it.
like,
If not,
All
you can do
right,
it for
everyone
India
heard it
too.
here first. We're patenting this idea. I don't know. Raf is with us, and Raf had some subjects that he brought up for Naropa, because guess what? The way time zones work, when I thought that I would be able to do APM is the time I normally, when Raf is normally 9 hours ahead of me doing Naropa. So we got this eclipse going on. So I mean, we're going to do another Naropa tomorrow, but I also wanted to show some of the conspiracy section because of that. If I can go back to the page there, actually, for
That's
what
my
was it?
love language.
It's
What's up,
right
Raph?
here.
By the way, I've seen you several times, and now that I can talk directly to you, hello.
Hello.
What is it?
Pleased to meet you.
Did I just
Yeah, I'm
lose
totally
it?
not planning to take over this with the link, so you know we're just going to go as far
There
as
it
it's
is.
entertaining. This
Yeah.
should be right. This is the overflow from last time where we got stuck talking about the recent elections. Big surprise.
Right.
But there may be a few interesting things here. I mean,
I
this
remember
is fun,
I remember
guess.
last time you guys were talking about uploading consciousness to different bodies or something, and how like different ways you might be able to do that. That was pretty interesting. I was in my car when I was listening to that shit.
Substrate independence is the idea that you can be moving mind from one substrate, one body to another, like one brain to another machine or to another substrate. And yeah, I think we could probably expand on that idea. But we talked a bit about the occult. I kind of thought this would be interesting to bring up, was the Lady Gaga witchcraft transformation thing that you were showing in this thing here, Raf.
I think basically this is, to summarize it, simply about this recurring theme of having this black goo everywhere. I mean, you've seen it in like Spider-Man and what is it, Venom? I think he's literally called Venom. Why don't they call him Virus?
The symbiote.
Amazing. Yeah, and this recurring theme, and apparently, again, some high-profile celebrities putting on a show. Who is it? Lady Gaga. If it wasn't for these conspiracy channels, I would never even know that she released a song. But yeah, kind of strange.
I look forward to this in a lot of ways. I wonder, like the carbon, blood idea is pretty cool. Like, so imagine instead of using iron for your blood, that you use like something else that can hold the oxygen better than iron can. So maybe you use titanium synthetic blood instead of iron, or like crabs, which have blue blood, are using copper instead of iron. So there's natural solutions to this, but you can use carbon to make a structure similarly. So carbon is what this feral fluid's made of, and you could have a nano composite material that held oxygen, and it might hold oxygen. Like your iron rusts, so your iron blood will only be able to hold oxygen for a very short period of time, which is why you're breathing the way you are. But if you could hold, the copper holds it for like a lot longer. That's why crabs don't have to breathe as often as we do. If it was carbon nanotubes holding your oxygen for 72 hours or 72 days, because the surface area of carbon to the volume, you could have so much oxygen. You could have maybe millions of times as much oxygen that you could have in the iron blood.
So could you traverse like space naked or something?
You know what I mean? Yeah, basically that's the vibe. Because if you're talking about like tardigrades, like if you could hold together a surface area structure, like diamond-like structure, that's a chain link of carbon. So it's pencil lead graphite, but it's this chain link that's holding oxygen. Then you have the oxygen and also the other gases you need. But you could imagine if you were, even, let's just say like on Earth, right? A normal reality. Like let's say your heart stops. So you say, okay, well, I'll call the doctor tomorrow. My heart stopped yesterday, but I forgot because today I had to go drive and work and stuff like that. I'll call the doctor the next day. So like 2-3 days pass, and then you finally call the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, your heart stopped? Okay, well, we can't schedule you until like next week." You know what I mean? And then because it's just not that big of a deal. And in a week you show up at the doctor and they're like, yeah, okay, well, we're going to change your blood. And then like at that point, you still have like a week of time that they wait until they're going to do the changing or something like that. Because you could hold oxygen and not die and not breathe for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks if you were able to hold that, if you were using this black ferrofluid nano material that he's talking
If
about
there
here.
ever is a transhumanism propaganda ministry and they don't appoint you, Andreas, then they really don't know what they're doing with their human resources. But to bring up something practical, and I'm wondering if you guys are familiar with it. Do you know about carbon 60? Because this could be something interesting to talk about. I mean, you know about it, Andreas. I don't know, Terrorist or Time Machine.
No, I haven't heard of carbon.
Because you talked about the is an intriguing idea, stacking more oxygen on it, but that's the real world application, which some people appear to be using to some positive effect, and at least the rat studies are interesting. I'll summarize.
You have definitely seen it before. So when you think about like a Buckminster fullerene is the way that a lot of people refer to it, is because Buckminster Fuller was an architect, inventor, an engineer, a man who said that all it takes is, what was it? I think he said all it takes is 1% of the population to invent some disruptive technology that will, free the 99%. You
could say that about spirituality too. If like 1% becomes truly aligned, then that also has like a global effect, a chain reaction.
Yeah, and I think that you could say that Buckminster Fuller was actually a rather spiritual person.
Of course, yeah, 100%. I think
he invented this geodesic dome that Disney's obsessed with.
That's pretty cool.
Right? Yeah. But this dome thing, so basically what happened, like all the domes you see are Buckminster designs, but what people realized later, that in nature this exists, right? At a certain point, some scientists were burning carbon, and there's all these cool. Carbon's amazing, right? That you can make carbon into a diamond or into a pencil lead,
into a bicycle frame.
Yeah, like that. But even from the nanostructure, like
like carbon nanotubing, you could create. If whoever is able to like make it efficiently to the point where we can make buildings out of it, they'll like take over the world.
Yeah, I mean, we basically can. I mean, the point is that
Efficiently,
you
like
the way. So, all right, you know that like story about like a piece of iron could be a nail, or it could be a hypodermic needle, or it could be like a space hammer or whatever. And like each time it's worth a different amount of money. It just depends on how you bend the metal. That's the same thing with carbon. Carbon can be pencil lead. It can be a diamond. It can be this array of hexagonal tube nano netting that becomes nanotube. It can be carbon onions, 3D carbon nanostructures. Nano diamond is this structure here. And so that actually, when we think about go back to that picture, that was fine. When we think about a diamond just means carbon structured in the most perfect architectural way, right? It's basically like if you talked about different ways of taking bricks and making it into like an IKEA or into a cathedral or something like that. This is the most dense way you can store it. Anyway, when they burned a bunch of carbon, they got a bunch of results. They got nano diamonds, they got carbon nanotubes, they got nano onions, all this stuff. But they also got these freaking soccer balls. And that's what they, when they looked at it, like they asked, like, what is this? And they said, like, well, there's a million ways I can explain to you what this is, but what you have there is essentially a soccer ball. And that is the way that this fullerene C60 net folds out perfectly, and it makes this perfect.
It matches a present day soccer ball.
Yeah,
Pattern.
the Adidas. Sorry, I need some water. Adidas Telestar ball. Give me a second.
That unwraps.
Get some water, Andreas. So I'll just continue the story briefly. The health interesting study part about this is that they had two groups of rats and apparently were poisoning both of them. I don't know, supposedly radioactive or something along those lines. And one of the two groups actually got C60 administered. A popular way to do it now is with olive oil. I'm not sure exactly how they got it. But anyhow, they had 0% poisoning damage. And then they kept the studies running, and the rats exceeded their lifespan like double or something.
They're like the Captain America of rats.
Yeah, right. And then they quit the C60, and then the rats eventually died. But also because of this, several people started experimenting with it, and it seems to have quite a few interesting effects. The idea would be that it simply basically captures free radicals in your body, like so many other things when they talk about antioxidants, right? And it just appears to be a quote-unquote super antioxidant, let's say, that just as Andreas described, because of its surface area as well, is kind of able to entrap so many, things that have the wrong charge in the body or whatever, and overall appears to have, let's say, detoxification or potential euthaning effects. But I believe so far, although quite a few even larger networks have become affiliates, especially like, how should I say, more Republican affiliated. But I'm not sure if it's like, I guess it's sold as a supplement right now or something like that.
Yeah, sorry. So basically,
my cat. If I can make my cat like super, super, super healthy or whatever, I don't know. That'd be cool.
No, that you can actually.
At
least
did you explain why this
I know about,
C60?
you can give the stuff to animals as well, usually. Yes.
That's cool.
And
I
mentioned because I think it captures free radicals. That's how I understand
right.
it. Like
that's the point.
Right?
They get yeah.
But show the lattice, yeah, because that's what I mentioned. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a whole other thing too, because C60 in conjunction with colloidal gold can help fold like proteins and folds. And so the other thing is if you take C60 with miso soup or with soy sauce, different things that are broken down aminos, liquid aminos with C60 is a very practical way of remetabolizing and fixing your enzymes.
Yo, Andreas,
a lot of things.
Did you ever see the movie Lucy with ScarJo?
For whatever reason, I haven't. I just saw a scene of it. I know everyone tells me like, dude, just do it. But
it's like Colin and fucking Idiocracy. Now it's you and Lucy. You got to see Lucy.
Yeah,
man. You got to see.
I will. I'll get it done. I saw the scene where she's like, because I was just saying, Keenan pointed it out. Actually, Keenan, shout out to Keenan. I was posting like, hey, I sometimes think about how cool it would be to imagine. I think it was a video about in Dresden. I used to, as a kid, imagine how cool it would be to see time from the beginning to the end. You just sit there and watch things unfold, right? And and then you sent me this scene from Lucy where she does that. She stands at like a street corner and sees like the 1800s to like ancient time to the future and things like that. Yeah. And I guess that is exactly what I mean, you can do that though, right? Like the more you kind of connect with a moment. I think that's also true about picking up on. And is Lucy more about picking up on any psychic
Well,
energy?
it was really focused on the action up until like it got really heady, and then it couldn't really say it in long expositional terms, otherwise it wouldn't be what the movie was supposed to be. So I think in essence, it was pretty much saying like what we all kind of intuitively know is that all points in space and time are inherently connected, and I guess because they're connected, how are they connected? Well, psychically, I would say, like for one. So if we have that connection as psychic beings, then yeah, you could say like eventually we should be able to master that or elevate our control over that domain, 4D or whatever.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to find. I keep forgetting where it is, but there was like a recent study of some people that had completely normal cognitive function, but when they scanned their brains, they saw like they had missing parts of the brain that they thought were essential for memory or for all these cognitive functions, and that it was just that they're picking up on existence and they're trying to figure out how to explain that. Like your brain is not just a computer, it's a antenna transceiver system for picking up on radio and exist. It's more than just you doing all the functioning, right?
Yeah, and it's also that was like the whole idea, even in like folklore or like fairy tales or something. Like if you look at how Dungeons and Dragons handles magic, it's like it's like you as a magic user, you're not really the source of it. You're just kind of like the channeler of some greater mystical force or whatever, or spiritual force. And yeah, I think that's kind of what they were reflecting, that idea of like really just beings like just as acting as antenna, channeling some kind of greater signal.
Yeah. I mean, I forget if we were going to bring up anything else about the Telstar ball. Oh yeah, just that like in '68, Adidas did the Telstar soccer ball, and this is kind of what we think of when we think of a soccer ball now. But it's also based on the Telstar satellite and the geodesic dome. But it doesn't. The Telstar satellite isn't an actual geodesic dome, which is the I think interesting thing, right? Like if you compare that, like this is not. These are not those hexaquads, right? The same way.
Yeah.
So it's just like this is a perfect divine sacred shape in a lot of ways. It's incredible. Honestly, I like it better than the diamond. But
it's cute.
Okay. Nanotech. All right. Well, okay, we did nanotech. There was another one you wanted to show. We had the disease of Gaga, which was about nanospores, and then what about Mark of the Beast system revealing?
Oh no, Elon Musk is the Antichrist, everybody. Not to make you panic, but you should definitely panic.
What do you think about the Doge? Isn't that brilliant? He's been planning this.
Don't panic, but do you have any strong evidence against it either?
I mean, I'm up on
not even
Doge.
believing
Like
in
I have
those
Doge.
stories, but
I have some Dogecoin. I think I'm up like fucking $3,000 on that shit.
I mean,
Tesla.
probably 9 by tomorrow. Like, I think it's going to go up in value like every day now that like it's trending. The meme is trending, right?
I think Kurt said something earlier in a chat that really rang true. He was like, speculative investments are okay as long as you have like 10x that amount in SPY. And I get the logic behind that, because SPY is the American economy, which is why you can't really outperform that. It's like saying, oh yeah, you think you could do better than America? All right, go ahead, buddy. So I get that, and it's just, I guess my main concern.
What is
SPY? It's an index basically, or it's a ETF based on the S&P 500 index, and it's basically like a collective of the most profitable companies, and just investing in that is investing in all of them.
Just invest in a new world order, guys.
Yeah, well,
that's where the profits are.
I guess you could say that. And the only problem I had is like the American. Oh, sorry, Andreas, you're muted.
Sorry, what's the difference between SPY and Spider? I was just wondering, because the investing in the S&P 500, like in those options, like that's the purest way to trade it. I think everything else is kind of just like a collective of just a pool of shares of that or something.
Yeah, you can't directly buy Spider unless you have like $500,000, but
you could do do options.
Yeah, and hedge. You can be part of some sort of a bank or
what is it called exactly now? SPY or Spider?
Die Spinne. Yeah, it's interesting. The spider. SPDR.
Spiders do not come here or whatever. Weaving spiders not come here. Bohemian Grove slogan or something like this.
And let's go a little further. Die Spinne was the root lines to get people at post-World War II organization that helped criminals escape prosecution, right? Odessa, there's a whole thing about Odessa trying to chase down Die Spinne, right? So I find that interesting that if you talk about IBM and the Holocaust, right?
Wait, just because you're on it, Andreas, I'm very pleased to interrupt you. I just sent something in private chat, which is a playlist which was recently recommended to me. I would have brought it up next or over next New York because there's so much backlog. This is really super interesting. I got a particular email, which I don't receive too often, from someone who said, like, look, the work David Ewing Jr. makes is great about history. Look at this former colonel woman. She does great historical explanations in terms of gladio operations, which should technically be a term that's banned on YouTube. All I know is there is a quite well-known German historian by the name of Daniele Ganser. Even she recommends his books. I would say, from my point of view already, it's conspiracy light, but still it's quite deep because he's talking about the gladios stay behind basically NATO retainer armies that are everywhere basically, and how they can explain many strange happenings and coups and drug runs and so on in all over the world. And it's a relevant puzzle piece and very interesting to look at. So I thought that could be something maybe many of you may be interested in. For now, I'm like at podcast number 4, and she goes through them step by step, and maybe it's not the whole truth or whatever, and there could still be a stage upon a stage upon a stage, but at least it's definitely a lot more angle and perspective than what you would ever have gotten in mainstream, and I think she's presenting it pretty well.
Thanks for the recce, man.
Interesting. Very cool.
I'm sorry, because I feel like this also ties into the whole transhumanist thing, with like Elon's ultimate vision of getting everyone Neuralinked for a more efficient, humanity and all that stuff. But I think this is a theory. Like, what if that transhumanism in the collective consciousness just has a schism where it's like, on one hand, you have the technologically enabled transhumanism, whereas on the other hand, you'll have another set of humans just completely rejecting it and going like the more spiritual route and saying, no, we already have a natural form of transhumanism. Our souls already are eternal. Why do we have to worry about?
That's kind of my concern. Like, and I think Raph has brought this up, and I've started to kind of like hear it. Is it's like, if we're already telepathic, are we making ourselves more telepathic really by installing something in our brain? Or is that going to maybe control and deviate and pervert and dement our capacity to do that more?
Sure, if it's going to F up my naturally emitted electromagnetic frequency spectrum and so on, then no bueno.
And so I might have spent a lot of time arguing with Raph in the past and been like, actually, it's not nearly the same.
Been fighting, as I heard last show.
This is a big question.
Right,
it's a big question. Is it nature? Is it nature or nurture? And so I might say, okay, well, it's amazing though what we can do with technology, because with technology I'm able to have this conversation with you on the internet and see your face, la 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 la. And then Raph could say, well, but if I'm thinking about you and then you text me, isn't that intuitively evidence enough that we could just be training this more? And the fact that we're not training this is the problem. It's really like not knowing how to use chopsticks. You know what I mean? And so that's just as important, is that we're all ignorant to the skills that we have, already naturally. It's like, we could be good at music. We have ears. We could train ourselves. So I think that's also relevant. Like, maybe it is literally that we've put so much effort into not training ourselves, into detraining humans, into having humans listen to music made by... Yeah, well, the AI is helping us, I would argue. Again, because if you think about it, the music I was listening to on
training AI, not so much focus maybe on training humans, but training AI.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Humans listening to music in the 90s and early 2000s, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm trying to use another word than degenerate, but it was just really poor music on purpose. There's some great stuff out there, but like on purpose. Yeah, but even that's minimal 3-chord kind of progressions a lot of the time, but that's still more. That was still the best of what we had. A lot of the most pop music was really
Okay.
redundant and crap,
Yeah.
you know, on purpose. And like rap got as bad as it could get, as non-melodic as it possibly could at a certain point. And artists were no longer musicians. I mean, it's like music used to be a thing that ignorant people could be inspired by. Like you go to a cathedral, which is a really beautiful place. You listen to music,
Gets you
which is
closer to
done on this
God.
organ. Yeah, and it's making you think about the golden ratio, and it's inspiring you. And if you're not inspired by that, if you're inspired by like, you know, I can't even think of it. Like slap my, I don't know, like just bad music that like makes you, you know, I don't know. Hotlanta rap from early 2000s probably doesn't inspire you to like build
All right.
giant
So crazy
cathedrals.
thought. What if there's a way to reconcile both paths? What if there's a way to properly integrate in a balanced way both like technological transhumanism and the prospects of like spiritual elevation, you know, just for all of humanity? And maybe that's possible. I don't know if it is.
What do you mean exactly? Like how? What's the? Because isn't it one or the other? It's like full burnt offering or not kind of thing.
Is it? I mean, maybe that's the way it has to be, but I don't know. Like maybe there is a way to just like be a trained musician, but also take advantage of AI technology in your own way, or music production.
Are we just
tools.
all talking about Kurt while he's in the room right now? Is that the joke? Because like I mean, you live around Amish people, and I keep thinking like you want to project laser beams at them and see where you fit. Is that right?
They made the news recently for sure. Not just Andreas loves Amish people, but they were infamous for voting for Trump.
Right.
I guess this election cycle.
Which they don't usually vote, and so that's wild that they got Amish voting. You know, like conspiracy theorist Amish. Did you see that? Like Amish people were talking about. I mean, you never see that. That's not like normal. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, I don't know any further details because I don't know personally any like Amish families.
Yeah, but psychologically, what do you think about being, you know, like a nature or technology? Can you find is there a balance that you can find in there?
In relation to Amish people or in general?
Well, I mean, like you live around Amish people, and so like they can't. I don't know. I feel like you got the opportunity to see the, like they completely refuse all of it,
Okay.
and that's kind of that's like maybe Amish people will become our organic psychics that we're talking about in this.
You could say they were the OG integrationalists, you know, because they do have a certain level of technology. Like a lot of times they will have a telephone, but the telephone will be like a booth, like at the edge of their huge farmland property. Like they would, yeah, they have to like go walk to it. I don't know, maybe even dial it up because it's oldest, whatever, you know, it's very, very old, and they use it mostly to contact people on very important matters, you know, to not just say, hey, what's up? Or, hey, can you pick me up from soccer practice? But yeah, I don't think they play soccer. They do play baseball every now and again, you know, because it's a very low maintenance thing, but I don't think they dance.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's supposed to be against music and all that.
Yeah, but I
guess they can sing their own or something.
They don't believe in instruments either. They can sing, of course.
That's what it is.
Yeah, their voice is their God-given instrument. But no, they do have certain levels of technology. They just, you know, religiously believe like, okay, we're going to make a cutoff point. And I don't think there's much that's entirely wrong with that. Some people demonize the Amish as purely being a cult, and I don't really view them that way. I think, you know, Western society has elements of a cult in it in its own way.
How much
you know?
more less of a cult than all the other lifestyle choices that are popular.
Yeah, everything's a cult.
Yeah, I think, you know, you can't view things through your own hegemonic cult. You know, like all forms of indoctrination have levels of, you know, cultism. That's the best way I can put it. So I think when you evaluate Amish communities, there's just a lot of variance. And so, yeah, some Amish families that I've met is like, I was a little bit envious because they had a great big family. Everyone seemed well connected, happy, and just having a good time. It wasn't like very sus. And of course you have the other end of it. Some communities are so, you know, isolated that they become a little bit, you know, inbred, and that produces genetic problems. And yeah, don't seem quite so lively as the other groups. It's hard to paint broad strokes, and I think it's just hard to paint broad strokes about people in general, including the Amish community. So sorry if I strayed off topic there.
No, that's cool. I mean, but what do you think about like? So what we're talking about is like psychic versus technology, and like I think the
Yeah.
artist in between that. And what do you think about? I don't know, like technology and furthering technology. Is that bringing us closer to
To
that natural side? I mean, because we're already maybe talk about in nature being kind of intuitive and psychic, organic in nature, right? I don't know. It's like that. I think that's like the fork that Chris is
No.
talking about.
Well, I
So
think there's. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to elaborate, Chris, that's fine too.
one, I only have one more thought when you frame it that way. So we all do have psychic energy, and so if we make that assumption that we have psychic energy, it's like, what are we putting that psychic energy towards? If we think that technology is a great important thing, that it requires a bias to think that technology is an inherent good. And so if we channel our psychic energy towards that proposition that technology is good, well, it becomes just another means of a form of worship. And so you could make the argument that you can get into this sort of feedback loop where you expect technology to be this great awesome thing that's going to save us, but it isn't the thing that saves you. You know what I mean? It's not the thing that psychically saves you. It's not the thing that spiritually saves you. It's just kind of there. It does make sense to try to advance it, I think, from a certain standpoint, because we just like to have our toys and play with them. But I do think we stray on the side of just pure ideological worship of technology, and it doesn't. When it becomes pure ideological worship, I think sometimes it can do more harm than good. That's the only thought
I have like two thoughts on it. One is like more of, in a sense, where what I think could help as we go into like a technologically empowered civilization, like further, I'd say, I would think that sometimes the answers are just deceptively simple. Like, for example, one of the main tenets of spirituality, no matter what faith or tradition you belong to, they say, well, you should try to be thankful. You should lead with gratitude. And if you lead with gratitude in all things you do, well, it turns out everything just turns out okay, because you're not doing things out of like a scarcity mindset, which ultimately leads you to do like the worst things, So I think like, again, like the answer's already there. We just have to like look at it and like keep it close enough, the simple ones, keep it close enough to actually embody them. So when we embody those things properly, integrate simple things like gratitude, and then approach technology, it's like, well, what's the worst that can really happen? That's one. And the second thought I had was, I think like one of the things that could really help is also like just engaging in a physical discipline, of some kind, like maybe yoga or a martial art or something, like just something, because it helps you, I guess, be more in tune with your body. And that, I think that's also in service of gratitude.
Dancing.
It's like, yeah, dancing too. It's like, I'm thankful for having the body to be able to do these things, that, to be able to express these things. And the more you take care of it, the better you can do it. And that also reinforces that like abundance, gratitude mindset. So yeah, I think that's how you really properly integrate it. And it's not like through like heady concepts. It's simple shit. Just be grateful, just be thankful. And I think that could help.
Do you think art art and music should move towards idealism or realism more, like for the purpose of helping people relate to what they're seeing and like cope, or to give them more hope, they need more idealism? Like, which direction do you think we need more right now?
Collectively, it's hard to say. I think it's not really much about the art in itself anymore. I think it's about like who's making the art, because everyone's so empowered now to make art. So now people are paying less attention to the actual output and more and they're trying to get closer to the source. And here's the funny part, like they see a piece of art they like, or a song or whatever, and then they go to the person that made it, and then they're like, well, who made that person? Because they have influences, they have their own, whatever, like where does that person get their mojo from? And then you keep tugging on that thread, and eventually like you get to God or something. I don't know, you get to, and which I think a lot of people are starting to kind of figure out, like whether it's like engineering genius or musical like savant, like being a musical savant or something. Like you tug on that string long enough and it's like, hey, you know, there it is, like the divine source. Be thankful. Like,
What do you think, Kurt?
There's always the question of, you know, should something be anything? And yeah, I don't think I'm starting to think less in terms of should, because I think it makes thinking less in terms of should and like what it is just is, and can I appreciate that, or you know, can I try to invite as many people into my circle and we all just, you know, kumbaya and feel okay. So relating to music, I guess, and you know, the divine vibration that is music, I think, you know, maybe the focus should not be on what should be with music, because I think if you try to gear people ideologically, the end results tend not to be good, because it tends to definitely put you in a position of like viewing yourself as an object and viewing them as an object as well. You need, like, there, real life is much more fluid than I think, you know, Western propaganda has made us believe. And so like I think there's a very fluid relationship between music, individuals, and how we adjust ourselves ideologically as a society. So I think
You faded. Your mic was doing so well. Now your mic's quiet.
Sorry. Now, a term that's now, it was used on Fox News, the atomization of people. That's how, you know, famous the word has become. The atomization of people. Atomization was used on Fox News. And so if we think collectively that is a problem, how do we address that? Well, how does that relate to music? And so I think really just getting to a less industrial side of music, I think that could be helpful to that problem. If we view that as a problem, I think it's a problem potentially, because just if people are mentally depressed, you know, unhealthy, and we say they're unhealthy, well, what do we do about it? But yeah, I think with music, it just becomes less industrial. I think there is a reason right now. I think the top 100 in music, a lot of people just don't like it. That's gone on for decades, don't get me wrong, but I think, you know, it's weaves and wanes. You know, I think you can go through the top 100 and a lot of it just does not sound at all like it's anti-nihilistic. That's the best way I could put it, you know. Some stuff's okay. It's been I think a year since I actually went through some top 100 just to, you know, put my finger on the button. Some of it's really some of it was really okay and awesome, but I think a lot of it is really, really depressing. And so, I don't like calling people out. I'm calling you out, Drake. Your music sucks. But no, I every time I listen to like a Drake song, I feel like it's really it's music designed to feed the ego of the listener, and so that's when you can't really appreciate things. If you're just reinforcing ego, you can't appreciate, you know, the fluid motion of the world and changing things, because you're just stuck in that very, very restricting perspective. And I don't think it's a feeling that's not even close to happiness is getting that satisfied. It's not happiness at all. It's just, you know, temporary sedation of what is otherwise, you know, a very problematic life and lifestyle, I think.
I think that's like, I don't know if people get what you're saying, but it's a huge point, because a lot of it is people will listen to music not to inspire them. Most people listen to music to
it's like an anesthetic.
Yeah, as a numbing agent.
Like I hate this job right now. Let me just fucking drown out reality with these headphones.
Yeah.
And it's not really drowning it out. You just kind
or
of
worse, like to remind you of another time. You know, like you listen to a song that like to pull you out of this moment. I mean, God, right?
Like Lana Del Rey. Lana Del Rey is perfect for that. It's perfect to just like dissociate to. Just take a bunch of Xanax, take like some shots of vodka, and listen to Born to Die on repeat. Oh man, that's a vibe and a
Dude,
half.
I
Right,
keep
right,
hoping
Lee?
though, like I've never bought a Lana album, but now that she's married to that Cajun, like I have like so much Cajun music. Like I'll be walking through Dresden listening to Cajun. If she puts out a freaking Cajun record, I will get the vinyl. I'm gonna be interested to hear what she does with it. I bet you it'll be fun and happy.
Yo,
But I don't know.
I was gonna say I get that question in dates sometimes. Well, I don't go on that many
What
dates. I don't mean to imply.
do you have Lana Del Rey albums? They ask you
No, no,
every
no.
time,
It's
don't
when they ask me, like, what kind of music do you listen to? And I get so shook by that question because, like, I feel like a weirdo for not listening to that much music. And you know, like, I probably listen to it unintentionally, but when I'm in the car, I listen to like, well, you know, like I'll listen to
Oh
your
my
stuff
God, right?
a lot.
I'll
Yeah.
send like random. Yeah, it's funny. Like that's the thing.
Have you heard of Xirtus, dear future girlfriend, potentially?
Oh
Oh,
no, that's
Well, there will be a fast check, you know, whether they're compatible or not.
who's this Mormon guy you keep listening to?
Dude, I was in a plane, and on the plane I was flying, and over the over Greenland, I went over this place called Saint Christian Sound, and I was like, what a cool name for a place. Like there needs to be like a thing that's just like, wait, that's not even the right one. That's okay. Wait, is it Horizon Point? Doesn't matter. I don't have it. But it's like St. Christian Sound. Whatever. We could definitely listen to our own music all the time from now on because you don't even need to. The fact that people were paying to listen to other people's music is crazy, right? How can you got an app to listen to old music? Like that doesn't even make sense anymore. Like,
You know,
why would you?
you know what I listen that something that I listen to these days that I never thought I would ever listen to, like growing up or even as an adult. I never thought I would find. You ever see those videos that's just like one frequency tone?
Oh
like,
yeah,
lyric?
tones. Oh yeah, all
like,
the time.
I
All
think it's like-
day. All
yeah.
day. Yeah. All the way. I like to listen to two tones.
I always thought that was
Sometimes.
like weird stuff, you know, something like
Yeah.
some hippie wook stuff. But then like
It is.
we just had a moment and I was like, yeah, I get it. You know, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I like to listen
You
to
listen to a
solfeggio tones.
singular
once.
tone, which is like or
Like
or
solfeggio tones and stuff
Yeah.
like
okay,
that.
but
Yeah.
it's like with a soundscape. It's not just one tone.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You know, they usually layer on some like looping sample of
I mean,
soundscapes and
Yeah,
sometimes
because I was just
nature.
imagining you being into like I really like this particular frequency. Exactly. All day. Well, maybe.
No, I think what they do is they layer a bunch of different like tonations of that frequency and then they sample over soundscapes like nature sounds, which is really nice. And yeah,
I
listen to
hate
more
that.
music.
That I don't like. I don't
Oh,
really
the
like
nature
the
sounds?
Yeah, the nature sounds pisses me off. I remember being at Burning Man and like having to explain that to people. I was like, look, do not put like recordings of chirping birds over my decent robots. Like I love my robots. Like I want to hear. I don't want my endangered sounds to be tarnished by
know what?
things
What-
I can get out of a park in New York
What if
City
these
with pigeons.
what if these different tones are actually like living things? What if they're their
They
own
totally
conscious- Yeah, they're their own conscious entities. Because
I'm glad you say that because they're
Yeah.
Neoplatonic concepts, right? And so
Yeah.
if Neoplatonic concepts are alive, and if you think about it, they are because they live through us and through all life. So they're extensions of life, or life is an extension of these concepts, right? So
And
the
it's all
concepts are
numerical as
primordial.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you get all into tones, Kurt, when you make music? Do you ever just be like, I'm gonna make it all about these tones?
I love tones. I love tonality. I love.
The tones, Kevin. The tones. I don't know if you watched.
I think
Masters
the
of the
death.
Universe.
There's been like a slight death of melody, you know, and like the 2000s. Like you don't hear a whole lot of melody in a lot of music forms, and I think that actually. Melody can be so pretty and so playful. I think, melody is really a life affirming thing. And so when you get away from melody, if you almost make, like a war on melody, I think it's a little bit nihilistic. It shows you the nihilism of the times. And so, yeah, and there's certainly nuance to almost every statement. So there's nuance to that one, I guess. But yeah, I think it is a little bit nihilistic how a lot of people have stepped really, really far away from melody and melodic writing. So tonality is really interesting. Sometimes I don't think necessarily about if you guys like microtones. Yeah, there's some musicians. microtones are used in like a lot of more Eastern music. That's where you have like the 24 tone scale, and you can tell a
Weird
difference.
fretboards.
Yeah. There's an electronic musician that played around with microtones. I can send you that album, but it's like the artist's name is Sevish, and there's a really good album on that.
Yo,
And
Andreas, look up a microtonal guitar just to see what it looks like.
Ooh.
It looks all crazy.
yeah, it's cool. So and like
Oh,
now
wow.
it's amazing what you can do. I think if you take a song, you get done like writing the song, and then at the end you just bump it up or down like a couple hundred hertz. It's pretty interesting to see what the effect is. So if you want something, sometimes at a subconscious level, if you want something to stand out, you can just send the entire up or down, just like a semitone, a microtone, and it can have a pretty interesting effect.
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So-
Well, if you get down to the mathematics of music too, if you do like an atonal sequence on melody, just pick some random tones. It's amazing what it can have. The effects it can have on your psyche, because the resolution of certain frequencies that aren't in our 12 tone scale can actually resolve. Well, I mean, even on the 12 tone scale, they can feel like they resolve on a microtone. It makes it, it gives you that satisfying, dopamine like kick if you actually do certain frequencies and then end it on a microtone. And I can't even describe it because I'm not that good at music theory, but there's other people that can. So if you do enough searching, you can find it.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, this video actually, I'm going to recommend this channel randomly that I've never seen before, Mean Tone Guitar, because this guy's playing a pretty cool mean tone guitar. So I don't know if you're interested in what we're talking about. This video, I'm not going to play it for you because I don't know if they want me to, but it sounds great. I'll tell you that. What about we could talk about Asia for a while. Are you guys interested in that? Because earlier you said you wanted to talk about, well, let's start with recap propaganda.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, because you talked about 4B, and I thought it was really interesting because 4B is such a non-issue
I brought it
in
up
America.
I didn't even know
But
anything about it.
But there's just so much depth to it. So when they bring up something in the West, it's they're bringing it up in hopes that we maybe figure out that it's happening in the East, because it's been happening in Korea, it's been happening in China. There's a lot of this push. The 4Bs or the 4 no's, right? It's no. In Korean, it was no. The 4 no's right here: no dating, no sex, no marriage, no child rearing. Right? These were the 4 no's. From journalist Hwang Jung, Flowers of Fire, the inside story of South Korea's feminist movement and what it means for women's rights worldwide. I saw some propaganda the other day that said feminism. It translated, it was in German, but it said feminism, be no man's peace, as in tranquility, right? And this has become I think that's kind of, I don't have an immediate problem with that. But I think it's also pretty awesome when a woman does bring peace to a man's life.
I'm pretty ignorant. I'm just saying, I think this sounds like a complicated issue. And I think one of the biggest things of it is when you're culturally homogenized enough, you could collectively do stuff like this, just to be hey, we're sick of being treated like crap. Let's not give them what they want. And because they can
Totally.
Yeah,
but I wonder, is this, I mean, what's it like in Korea? Do you think that this is something, I mean, because from my understanding, most Korean women are pretty much, I would not want to mess with them. They're pretty hardcore. They're pretty powerful people, generally speaking, most of the Korean women I've dealt with. Is that not effectually always the way you feel about the society? That women are being, why is the 4B something that would come out of Korea? Do you think that you have an idea?
Well, because of the cultural homogeneity, it's so easy for them to get away with abusive, not just domestic abuse, between husbands and wives, but also between employees and employers, or even within the military, bullying and violent abuse is rampant. And it's just a very abusive culture. And I think it's part of it is because I look at it like this, as an Asian guy living in America, you always have that to be distinguished in a way, whatever you are really in America, because you're not everyone's
Sure.
expected to be different from each other, right? That's just part of the deal when it comes to America. I mean, sure, you have like diasporas and you have like concentrated communities, but generally speaking, as an American, you're like, well, not every American looks alike. Whereas in a culture where in a country, if you look like everyone else, and then something bad happens to you, I feel like there's this weird psychological factor where it's like, it's just another one of us, that just gets like killed off. It's like there's plenty more of us where we came from, right? So yeah, I think it's like a different psychological thing. Maybe it's just more of like a hive mind thing, as opposed to whatever. But then like eventually humanity has to break out of that, right? Because we're not just parts of a whole. I mean, we are, but we're also like individuals and stuff.
But
right?
I don't see this happening in North Korea. Like, I wonder if this is
With all that
more
rugged individualism and the
Yeah.
that, of course, being America, it's still possible to herd everyone into a false dichotomy between two parties. Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing?
Well, not
More
just two
so.
parties, but like, let's say that you get like, I mean, you can have hundreds of examples of somebody becoming the, same thing in a different pod of cliques. So you have maybe like the same style of maybe like there's the four of us, right? And there's some thing that defines us. There's probably thousands of cliques like this that are defined the same way because a bunch of Americans decide their uniqueness is this thing, and it's only unique as long as they're the only version of themselves. So they have to go be that for a different group. And so we have this divisive culture that multiplies itself essentially by building models of itself. But that's also to the extent why I say it's not Korean culture that's high, homogenized. Maybe it's any colonial exploited culture that's suffered from hyper individualist United States colonial powers and PTSD.
Like a
Because
virus.
PTSD and rape and trauma will lead you to, I feel like if you systematically abuse people and the military constantly leads them to the point of, I mean, nuclear threat is such a joke in Korea. Like, it's not even taken seriously at this point because they're just so used to it. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. Technically we could worry about that. Like, we do have bomb shelters, but like, really, like, get on with your day. And that's like become the mindset. It wasn't that mindset in 1962, but it is now. That's just it's accepted. And so I wonder about that as a people. North Koreans are different, but South Koreans, I feel like there's a lot of consequence to just being a conquered people that were exploited. I mean, I see this also maybe because I'm in Dresden. I'm seeing German people that are Stockholm syndrome the same way by American culture. Like, you see on one side of the street some bricks from like the rubble that have been put back into a kind of nice neoclassical building, and then on the other side a friggin' strip mall in Dresden, a strip mall that looks like it's from Los Angeles. It's as bad as bombing the place that they put that up there. You know what I mean? It's like ridiculous. And it's just, maybe do they do it only because they don't care and because they love it and they've learned that they're so traumatized. There's either you do it. There's two possible reasons I see. Either you're so traumatized and so Stockholm syndrome that after you've destroyed these cathedrals and everything, you legitimately think strip malls from America are cool because they destroyed your stuff, so they're cool. Like, that's a way to think. You're just a hostage.
How long are you up there for?
I don't know, like a month or something. But I'm gonna go to Vienna after that.
Okay, so like, I don't know. I mean, if only you stayed there for like longer than a month, I would say get a bicycle and then just.
Well, there's bicycles everywhere in Europe. You just get a bicycle and you put it down, and you get another bicycle.
Oh,
It's
really?
Just a bicycle. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
okay,
just-
I get it. Yeah, just like a free. Yeah. That's awesome.
No, you rent. I think you pay like $7 or something like 7.
No, I mean, like, you don't
and
have to
get it for a
worry
week.
about you don't have to worry about taking it anywhere. It's just so communal. Just leave it there, and someone else.
They have there's like they have these bike check-ins and checkouts and things. It's German. They're very ordnung people. They have a way of doing it.
Yo,
For some reason, I can't find the reference anymore, just briefly, but because you asked about the architecture, wasn't there like a somewhat halfway known conspiracy or proven documentation that the CIA or whatever alphabet soups deliberately decided everyone should be building in brutalist architecture because it simply, lowers your vibration?
depressing. I would not be
Yeah,
surprised.
of course. No, that's what
Well,
I'm saying.
And the
Now looking
Soviets
up,
were all about
doesn't
it
show
too.
on the first pages anymore, so Google already scrubbed it at least.
Honestly,
But
I
this
would
is where-
argue. I would argue
the
that
Soviets, of
architecture
course. Soviets, of course,
architecture
Soviet
also
brutalism.
influences music. It influences film Definitely film
yeah.
for obvious reasons, but music for sure. Like, a lot of like songs without people it's
Yeah.
all affected by the feng shui of their environment.
If you remove if you remove the inspiration, then people don't have the inspiration. And so that's why AI is so useful, in my opinion, because AI isn't held back by the ignorance of the humans that have been put in charge of media and pop culture. So you are accelerating very quickly the audience, and that audience is able, way more than people realize, to become an artist. That's the thing about the human that's so interesting. And so that's the other thing. But there's the Stockholm syndrome approach to the perception. There's another one, which is the pendulum. So I'm either, so used to you destroying my culture that I am now in awe of you, or because there's just enough left, I'm seeing on one side of the street, neoclassical architecture that's almost made it, and on the other side of the street, I'm seeing the pendulum swing, right? And this is designed to maybe cause a revolution. Maybe I'm wrong here, but you'd think like in 20 years or some period of time of seeing this, that eventually you would revolt. Like this would cause such anger in a person to see the difference between classical Dresden and colonial strip malls, that you would do something, that everyone would do something. Am I crazy?
That's what Nick Land was saying. Like back then, he was like, yeah, this pendulum is eventually not just going to be a steady swing. It's going to get faster and faster, and it's going to get more violent. Eventually people, within a single lifetime, they're going to get fed up. They're going to be like, nah, stop this pendulum this instant. Pent up violence time. We're going to release it all. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like, I don't know if that's just too crazy to look at it and think that it's planned, but it feels like architects and social engineers plan, if they could plan where a bus will go or a tram will go or how cars will stop, then I feel like they can plan how a society will riot. I mean, and this is normal in France. In France, they'll tell you at this time of the year, they're going to have a riot. And then at this time of the night, the riot will stop.
I mean,
is
it really that different from like ancient civilizations creating huge temples made for sacrifices? It's like, well, this is where we bring the lives to sacrifice. Maybe they just figured out a more clever way to do it. Well, this city block is the place where we make our sacrifices, and at those cycles.
Yeah, you also have to wonder about that because in terms of reincarnation, if you're an innocent sacrifice, does that elevate your karma? Is there some level where they think that they're doing a service because you didn't deserve it, and who's the one that actually pays and atones for that suffering? Because a big part of this is that there's no free lunch. If you kill a bunch of people, if you destroy a bunch of energy, energy's not created or destroyed, it's changed. So there's going to be constant payment, and you're constantly going to have to reimburse whatever you take from the universe, right? I think that's the issue. I don't know. What were we looking at a second ago?
Wait, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay, we talked about 4B. I wanted to bring up two more. One was, remember a couple of months ago when Your Body, My Choice was a joke about forced mandates for the vaccine? Right? Am I wrong here? Remember?
Now, my favorite. I was watching a 4B video, and the top comment was they're threatening 4B against men who haven't been hugged in years, and it's I think there is an element of truth there. It's not that. Yeah, I feel like, what was the other one that Jack brought up? That was if 4B was so plausible, then abortion wouldn't have been the top issue or something still. Oh,
right.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's well, this isn't to be in support of any administration or ideology. It's just that we have the population cliff has already started. It's birth rates have declined. We're declining in population. That could change. A lot of things could change, but if that's the trajectory, it's how powerful is a movement or a response going to be if we're already barren, we're already atomized, and we're already not very intimate with other people? It's maybe the biggest issue is how do we solve the problem of intimacy with other people, men and women, general society. and maybe, I don't think that hasn't really been an election point. And I think if people really started thinking about that, how do we make people less lonely? It totally changes the conversation. And so, yeah, that's not to say we're taking a step backwards necessarily.
But
I'm
we're
saying,
more likely to work. I mean, if we learn, this is back to that Tinder conversation. If we learn to work together and put people into doing social activities that they're able to communicate, communication is the reason that they're trying to fight in the first place.
So one of the things that's peddled
Miscommunication.
into our brains, like if we do any sort of social activity in high school, post, extracurricular, there is no I in team. It's like we're indoctrinated to just completely forget about that once we graduate high school and we're not in part of a sports team anymore. And so, like,
Right.
we're taught to come back into that ego once we have no need to be part of a team anymore. And now we're in society. It's like, well, go screw yourselves. Every man for himself. But what if we actually, took that to heart? What if we took to heart the idea of we need to let go of our egos for the betterment of other people, be in a community, see ourselves as part of a team in society? That
seems like such a slippery slope to Neuralink, though, right? Because like you get rid of your ego and you're just like.
For me, it's like I just think all I need is God, and the more I embody that gratitude, the more blessings I get in life. And it makes sense for me because like the more I just say all I need is God, the less I seek shit from other people, which pretty much like prevents me from ever harming them. And it's not like I isolate myself. People come to me asking me for sometimes like help, like my family hits me up all the time asking me to help out with shit. I don't deny them, and I'm like, yeah. So at that point, I feel like I'm more giving, because like I'm more thankful. I'm more thankful of everything I have. I don't seek shit from other people. I try not to. People seek shit from me, and I'll give as freely as I can, because like, what else can I do? What else can I do? What? Just make shit worse for people? Like, I don't think that's gonna work for me. Like, I don't think so.
Well, I think also you're doing a lot of building community, like by doing sword fighting and these things, like doing the sword. It's not even just fighting, but like martial arts training and everything. It's building community in a lot of ways, and
that's not really me. That to me is like that shit like that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm just another node for that to keep living on.
I dig that part of the Bible where it's like through people, like you'll know God through, like you can't see him because he's doing stuff through people essentially. Like that's like the idea of like if you need God, then you're gonna get it through helping and building relationships. Yeah. Right. With people. Like that's the people that you're helping and are helping you. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like that whole thing with the your body, my choice. Because it was about the vaccine. I just don't get it. Like, it's so crazy that they were so, like, this is the last 4 years of politics. I just wanted to harp on that for a second, that it's just, that the people were like, what a crazy thing to say. And it's like, what, are you kidding me? That's what we were saying. It was a crazy thing for you to say that to us. As men and women, we didn't like it, that we were forced, because it was our body, but it was your choice. Like, that's the democratic process. That's what happened with the forced vaccines.
Radicalism has no capability of self-reflection. That's what we're seeing every single.
Why don't you make more bumper stickers? You could make a fortune. I don't know.
Oh man, good luck, like rocking that.
I would put that on a Volvo. Are you kidding me? Okay. What about this? This is probably fake, but still, this could be real. Have you seen this? Like, people have been talking about this on this internet in China that they're.
Sorry,
people said it's fake.
I was gonna say I don't think that means no gays or no queers. I think what that means is like no wearing that as like your flag, like no outward.
Pretty sure we know what that means. I'm pretty sure they're like, all right, like that kind of gay is not welcome here.
Full disclosure though, like I have no idea what the Chinese people be thinking. I may look like them, but like Koreans have
the fact that you have to give that disclaimer is so 2024. That's like, oh my god.
I'm just saying, it's like I've been like asked if I was Chinese before, and I was like, no, I know I look like it, but I know they think very different. Like,
oh my god,
South Koreans are like weird mix of Americanized thinking with like this bastardization of Confucian philosophy.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's a conservative strain in Asian culture that we need to pay attention to, and but the PRC, regardless.
Well, is it true that the TikTok broadcasts in China are different than in America? That would be
course.
one
Yeah.
aspect.
This is the thing that they don't show you on the internet that happened the other day. I wanted to bring this up earlier and be like, newsflash, breaking news from China. Like, that's how funny it was to me. But this apparently is happening more often than I knew, is that there are the same kind of crazy things that are happening in the United States. We just don't hear about it nearly as much. And, like, it's actually more intense than ever. Like, China is censoring things like this Zhuhai car attack where 35 people were mowed down by this crazy dude in a car.
I also want to say, like, you know, in America, I grew up with like shit like Roswell and like all these like Americana-based UFO stuff and paranormal events. China has their own incredibly rich history of like very weird shit, you know, like very weird events,
Totally.
stuff that you just can't explain. I don't know. Some of them were like crazy. I heard one on this YouTube channel where like people just like wake up in a completely different province back in like late 1800s, and they were like they just couldn't explain it. They were like, this is weird. Oh well.
I feel like the government could do that to you in China. They have enough power. Like, maybe not even just put you back in time, but just put you in a weird part of China that like looks like the 1800s and you couldn't get out of it. Like, you wouldn't know any difference.
I think China has a lot of magic. What do you guys think about the Shaolin Temple? Isn't that cool?
I want to go there.
I think the PR. I don't know. Like, I'm curious. Okay. So what I grew up believing was that all the magic escaped China into Germany, into Africa, particularly into Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia. That as many as could escaped out of PRC mainland, and that the mainland was an iconoclastic effort to destroy the people's connection to their ancestor worship, to Shintoism, or not quite, but similarly, and to destroy their spiritual practices, like the Shaolin practices, right? So the Shaolin practices that we're able to survive, that you're seeing, are very specific martial techniques where you look at Tibetan Buddhism, and it's like we talked about Neoplatonic concepts where they're worshiping archetypical gods, but those are not actually gods per se. They're like the concepts that lead to being, which are meditations that they do for non-locality. And so they're very deep meditations. They're more deep than they're technologies more than they're just like religious practices, right? And that's something I think is lost in the PRC. But maybe today, considering how things have changed in China, and I'm kind of ignorant to that, like in the last 10 or 15 years, like I know to an extent that China has so much power and they've been able to invest and investigate in things. And maybe now modern China has gone and accumulated. I mean, they kind of control Taiwan to a limited extent. They kind of control parts of Malaysia and these parts of Vietnam. It's totally plausible that some of these inter-party communists are actually kind of into magic as a technology. I just am not familiar with that.
If you guys believe in the shadow government, I mean, they also conceptually they're supposed to be like transcontinental, right? Like they transcend.
The Chinese shadow government is scary as hell.
I'm saying if we're talking about the same people, like at the very, very top, if there is a very, very top, even maybe it goes on.
Oh, are you talking about breakaway civilization government? Or are you talking about deep state? Or are you talking about Chinese shadow government? Or are you talking about
all
like
of the
general...
above? All of the above, technically, like because if you go like the breakaway, they have so much power and they pretty much control everything under them.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, we talked a bit about that idea. So if there were ancient people, it seems like a probability that in the 20th or 21st century, a singularity would emerge, or that someone would attempt to and accomplish it. But looking back in time, anyone who could have done it in the ancient world would have been highly conscious monks, or you could imagine the Tibetans as being able to. That's the idea of meditation, to be able to change reality. And so if you're non-causally changing reality, that's what we said earlier, the difference between technology and organic nature to do this. But if they reach that same point, that makes a lot of sense. Like this obsession with Tibet.
Interesting.
I feel like that's what PRC is trying. One of the main reasons PRC might be trying to maintain control over Tibet, but also the CIA does that, right? The CIA pays for the Dalai Lama. It was like on the Freedom of Information Act shows that he's been on CIA payroll since 1968, I think.
I want to
So-
stay on the subject, but I want to say real quick, I didn't understand it at the time. In college, I had a professor. He would get really offended because he did have a really thick accent, but he would say, I'm not going to do the accent. I'm sorry. But he would say, he would get really offended when people would get annoyed at his accent and call it a Chinese accent. He's like, I am not Chinese, I'm Taiwanese. And so I didn't understand where the offense came from. But in hindsight, it makes total sense because he was a Yankee at heart, even though his accent was so thick. He loved coming to the USA. But yeah, it's really interesting to think about that in hindsight. But I want to talk more about temples and Eastern temples and stuff.
And also Western, because this is something from Naropa that we'll probably look at a bit more tomorrow as well. But just this is a list of Western esotericism family tree that Rafi found.
Right. I haven't even like properly studied it yet, but I just found it's quite interesting. That's actually a video essay on that. And yeah, definitely.
I had
worth checking out.
Mormons
At
I
least
saw
have
at
an
some point.
overview.
I'm definitely on the purple side.
Yeah, me too. Clearly, there's more Mormonism fit in here at some point, which was cool. But it was, I think, they talk about occulted. I think there's also exoteric, which is like Scientology has an exoteric level as well. Freemasonry, Swedenborgianism, the Neoplatonism, Kabbalah. Very cool stuff. This is probably like a worthy deep dive to get into. The Martinist order. We talked a bit about my Puerto Rican friend Dane at one point and how we did a video on the Martinist because he's a Martin. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Theosophy. There's a lot of cool temple building. What do you think about, what was it that you were interested about when you were saying you were interested in temples? Like, what excites you about the Shaolin Temple, Kurt?
The prospect of essentially preserving reality itself, because it's like, well, it seems
Preserving reality.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people would like to manipulate and change reality. You want to preserve it. That's fascinating. Why is that?
I didn't say it was a want. I just think that's what these temples are doing in a sense. Because if you don't have tradition, like what do you actually have? I think that's a good question, but I think life is moving past us so fast. It's like we live in such a different society. You know, it's postmodern, post-truth. It's like when you actually approach something that's structured on hundreds or thousands of years of tradition, it really takes you aback. You know, it's like that's why it seems so powerful. And so yeah, it's like just the pure awe and pure power that a lot of these temples seem to have in the face of, you know, our current context and our current culture. I think that's what they're doing in a sense. They're preserving reality itself, because we have to interpret reality to some sort of degree. And so a lot of these traditions and practices, you have to see them, you have to witness them, you have to witness that process. But it is kind of like a time machine as well. You know, what can take you back thousands of years? Well, it's only the things that have been preserved for that entire amount of time. Which is why, you know, I think the King James version of the Bible, you know, it's a few hundred years old, but it's not even truly based. If you want to be a truly based Christian, you got to learn the Hebrew, you know. But
Or at least Greek, yeah. But
yeah.
Well, okay.
Who's the German guy that said architecture is just frozen music? And if you look at temples, well, that's like those are some of the greatest songs ever written, in so to speak.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of indoctrination because, like,
Wolfgang Goethe.
Yeah,
Goethe said that. Oh, that's cool. Nice, bro. Pull out the Goethe quotes. Sweet.
Yeah, if you look at, like, I've never been to China and seen their temples, but they have a completely different, like, joint system. It's a lot more practical, I would say. But even in architecture can show you a lot of, you know, indoctrinated beliefs because, well, a lot of what your building philosophy and your general philosophy will go into your design of okay, do you have very pretty things? Do you pay attention to aesthetics, or do you go for strength, or do you go for a lot of other things? And that's why, just looking at the temple and how it's built, a lot of those temples have been there. What is the oldest temple? That's a good question, because I'm pretty sure the oldest one.
Baalbek.
Well, I'm just glad you're psychic, because I literally just entered the search query oldest Shaolin temple as you were saying it.
Yeah. Woo.
Well, also Göbekli Tepe is supposedly the oldest temple.
Let me just say before we go on into this, my question here, of course, is, I mean, we know at the very least with communism, there could have been a lot of history obfuscation going on. To me, the role of Tibet and this whole, CIA connection is not completely clear yet. What I just want to point out, and maybe I've just spoken too long with David Ewing Jr., who's always looking at these sources and highly questioning them, also because the way you psychologically set it up and said like, oh, you have this awe and so on, which would be understandable if their own story, where they always like to backdate themselves for thousands of years, is actually accurate in the way that they are presenting it, which by now, unfortunately, I often find doubtful what would be there still, because you mentioned about meditation techniques and so on. And even the examples I know from scientific studies, they're like really good in manipulating their heart rate and all of these things. So there must be some kind of lore or knowledge. But I by now would suspect it's probably under something that would look like a completely different brand than whatever they are portraying themselves as now. That would just be my assumption.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to say that I would say maybe today you look at something old and you say this is a historical record or something, but temples are universities. And so at some point, these were accelerationist chambers
that's a good one.
For your body, your mind, for epigenetics.
Raising the frequency. Yeah.
Even epigenetics. I mean, if you think about it, like if you take several generations of somebody that was, given certain diets and certain exercises, and they're bred even with like other athletes or something like that in the Shaolin Temple, they're going to be different. And so it's very rapidly, religion is used to evolve humanity faster consciously than they would randomly over millions of years. And I think that's interesting because people say, oh, well, we have this really strange period of rapid evolution where humans get super smart and we get weaker. How do we account for that? Is that just aliens? I have a minor theory that it's incestuous, conscious, ethno-religious breeding. Right? Because ethno-religious incestuous breeding will have epigenetic responses that rapidly can have genetic issues. Like we could talk about like why is it that apes are 50 times stronger than humans, but also why is it that in a time that usually should take hundreds of times as long, in like 6 million years.
And why eventually the Greys end up so messed up and have to go back in time to our time to like harvest us or to reverse the course or something, or to change the course.
That is not outside of the, that works still. That works with this theory.
Or they are just, what's his name called from Dark Crystal, the puppeteer? Jim Henson, CIA puppets. That's the other. Because generally, I'd be all along on that storyline.
I think Jim Henson's a lot more than just a puppet, though. That's the thing. He was a string master.
But he can have the string master puppet, CIA gray-looking puppets, So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's many different stories. It's difficult to know which ones. What does alien really mean? Does it just mean it's illegal to be in the US? Does it mean it's from beyond a certain surface area? Does it mean it's from below the surface? I mean, that's definitely one thing where everyone should go watch Andreas's special on Vice about Hollow Earth. But that's something that is not discussed at all. We know there's all these underground caverns. Too many people have spoken about all these DUMBs, but no one's looking to research or investigate that. I want to have the Mars expedition.
And a lot of time you can't, because those are
to the underground base and not to Mars.
Most of the best spots, though, are national parks and federal preserves. And that's kind of an interesting thing as well. I mean, I think about that recently, the idea that I've been looking at some of these disappearances just for the heck of it.
Well, just briefly on the alien topic, because this is exactly
what I have something to add on to that as well.
In the third episode, I believe, because she says, at least with one or a few of these parks, often you have super high-grade military installations exactly next to it. Is that because they're observing Sasquatch? Is that because someone's dressing up, and then removing people from there and then they vanish and later they claim it's aliens. I don't know, but it's something to
So
investigate.
one thing I saw a couple docs on this, and I was listening to some tapes. One thing I found really interesting about some of these national park disappearances, and just for a backup, like we all know this idea that more people disappear in national parks than in Los Angeles. It's just weird, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's more people missing in national parks than there are on the back of milk cartons. It's crazy. And when you start to figure out like where they go, it's like these stories are so chicken soup for the soul meets Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like they'll find the person met a kid and then they got saved, and that kid or this lady, and like it looks exactly, the kid tells this tale later. Okay, let me try that again. Kid goes missing for 5 days. When he gets back from Yosemite, after being missing in Yosemite for 5 days, he says, a lady helped me cross and get my way back. And I was only gone for like a day in the woods, but we were together and then she got me back. What does she look like? Well, he explains all of this and her name. And they say there was a woman with that name who looks just like that, who went missing 38 years ago.
Dun dun dun.
Right, all of that stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's a ghost story. But you hear more of them. They're like, a guy's talking. He's in North Carolina. He's at a base or at a park near a base, and somebody goes missing. They send out everyone looking for this guy. You know, people who've lived in this area for their entire lives. They can't find him. Finally, after 4 or 5 days, they give up. A week later, at one of the spots, they find his shoes, and then a few, like they're like, we've already looked here. Where these shoes come from? Okay, whatever. And they keep going around. They look for a while. They don't find anything. A few years later, they find his canteen like left where his shoes were, and they're like, what? And like it's empty now. And like this constantly happens for like 10 years. They're finding like stuff from him that's like not aged at all. And so this goes into my thought also with, when they see Bigfoot, because of this whole Gigantopithecus character. Gigantopithecus is this kind of big-footed hominid that, is the largest hominid that we have records of. And this is the kind of thing, look at his feet, right? The idea that some of these state parks are treaty zones for fairies is always something we've talked about. In the 1890s, there's this idea that, what do you think? Yeah, the environmentalists like really care enough about state parks? No, they tell you. They think that they're going to get killed if they don't protect these areas for these hyper-dimensional beings that are fairies. What the hell does that mean? So eventually, it's like aliens, or it's some kind of breakaway civilization from the future. And if it's a outside of time thing, that kind of makes a lot of sense. Why you're getting someone who disappears and you find some of his stuff a year later, and a year after that, and 5 years later, or this person interacts with a person who's still missing in that, because they're in like a time out of time void in nature. And sometimes they see Bigfoot because Bigfoot is just like genetically modified or ancient or future, whatever. This is where time and space are crossing in some of these state parks. I think that's what's going on.
Like, do you like ley lines, like ley line points and stuff?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about aliens that I like to distinguish, because there's like, there's levels to it, right? There's a material shit, like the physical shit, like, oh my God, there's actual physical like beings that can come and kill us and do whatever. But then like the more you conceptualize it, the more you think about like a more advanced species than us, it really depends on how far can you imagine. Like if there really is like, I mean, what's to distinguish them from like angels and demons? Maybe that's what they are. They technically are aliens, right? Like fucking, even if they are extra dimensional or higher dimensional, super dimensional, those are technically aliens. I mean, what's to distinguish what? And I think that's when it gets like existential. That's what causes people beyond to just think, oh my God, we're getting invaded by like ETs. It's like, no, it's like, what if they've been here amongst us, all around us, just we can't see them, like we just.
Well, I mean, like, what does it even mean to be more advanced than us when you start to think about it? Because like there's soft disclosing to you how freaking advanced we are right now. Popular mechanics have been talking about how scientists can teleport a whole human. The only catch is that the body is completely disassembled and you'll pretty much destroy the original version of the self. But I mean, if we can disassemble a being and send it, like quantum teleport a being to another place, we're pretty freaking advanced. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're the thing.
Well, if this is really advanced, because only 2 weeks ago I talked to you about to this private excavation site close to Vienna, where they are saying it may well be that there is something akin to a quote unquote teleportation room, which interestingly enough would work with an instrument using resonance, which in this particular example would theoretically teleport both organic and inorganic matter through a quartz vein over hundreds of kilometers to the attached, underground access site. So if that is correct, and this site at least is older than 50 or 100 years or whatever, then
Right.
even this could be old technology, but we're just, re-engineering
The thing
it
about that
with
kind of technology is once it exists, again, it's outside of time. Like once it exists, it can exist at any moment because it can make any moment. It can recreate, it can re-synthesize any moment. So time becomes relevant.
Everyone has their own take or guess on how my smooth brain guess is that at any given time you vibrate at a certain frequency or whatever. Maybe it's like a extra dimensional frequency or whatever. And if you could figure out a way to shift that, it's like, oh, instead of you like of this frequency at XY coordinate, we could switch it, and there's no travel. It's literally just bloop bloop, and then you're there. Like that's kind of how I
This
view
is
it.
supposedly even the model they purport in Futurama for the spaceship. I had never looked into it too deeply, but I'm familiar with the concept that instead of traveling through space, I'm just changing my vibrational XYZ coordinates in the system, and maybe time coordinates too.
Yeah.
And if I can figure out how to change those, I can disappear and then reappear anywhere. And supposedly in Futurama, I guess also they say that it makes the universe around it move, but the ship itself doesn't move.
Kurt.
Now, low-key, the rant about state parks was in and of itself one of the best ghost stories I've heard. I've never been more convinced that Sasquatch is real after that explanation. So that's
Thank you.
Well, I've heard of that. I have these stories.
my hot take.
I once attended a conference where some of these things were read out. One of the things that stuck out was that they said that they found the clothes neatly folded, but apparently most adults turned up dead, but quite a few children turned up alive after vanishing, which is also very strange. And at least in 1 or 2 instances, the one I heard can just be a story, but the description that the child later gave very much was like a Sasquatch. So it was kind of like, yeah, the bear took care of me. And they're like, okay, what bear? Yeah, so it's really difficult to differentiate between, again, what is the government up, what is a real interdimensional phenomena. Yeah.
Kurt, I know you said you had you're going to have dinner pretty soon. Is there anything you wanted to make sure that you shared with the world before you have to go?
Supper time.
Hey, yeah, it's supper time. I'm gonna join my family for some grub. Hope you're all doing well. The 2028 election. Now that's gonna be lit.
Dude.
So
Can't
I'm
wait.
voting for Tulsi. Tulsi's gonna run. She's gonna be the first female president.
I was gonna
We'll
say
be all right.
Republicans are smart. They would run a woman,
Yeah.
a lady.
It's got to be, I think. I think it will be. I think it'll be like
I-
Sarah Palin kind of thing, yeah.
Now Tulsi would win. I don't know if the Republicans are smart enough to do that, but we'll see.
She looks like Electra, right? Doesn't she have like a silver streak in her hair now or something?
Oh,
Psylocke.
she emphasizes it. She always pulls it up so that it's part of her flair. But it's always like been that way. So
Swag.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure she's doing that on purpose, yeah. All right, well, everybody listen to American Time Machine. Not just like when Kurt talks, but his music. But also when Kurt talks. But like, he's got also, I like his Manufacturing the Tribal Society album. That was kind of one I was listening to recently. Bees is pretty good. Cave is great. D State is fun. Listen to all of his music. It's pretty fun. I like it a lot. I
Hey,
hope you
thanks.
do too. All right.
call me for commissions. Hope you all are doing well.
All right.
Ciao.
Take care of yourself. Ciao.
Take care. Bye bye.
Well, how about the Putin spy whales? Remember this? The belugas, they're back. Mystery around Putin spy whale may have been solved. Whale deployed by Putin as a Russian spy seemed to chapter of an alternate version of blah, 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 blah. They recently found that the beluga expert whale, they said it escaped, I think it is, or through the chain of vets and trainers, the message came back that they were missing a beluga. Yeah, the experts believe Halbiter fled from the military site in the Russian Arctic as it was a hooligan. So what do you think about this, that there's actually like escaping whales from custody, escaping spy whales? Military has captured the Russian beluga, and then it escapes.
Oh, so no, now we don't even know where it is.
Yeah, isn't that good? That's pretty
It
good. I
sounds
think.
like a psyop story in itself, but the one it reminds me of is didn't like many chimpanzees, or you even talked about this on the show, I think I tuned in, like rhesus monkeys escaped or something,
Oh, I
supposedly.
think at some point, yeah. There's a lot of that. So, what do you think? There's going to be like a Planet of the Apes kind of a reality?
No,
I
I
don't know.
think no, this would be the perfect setup for a new pandemic, of course, because they usually start with the escape from the monkey lab, no?
What we know about the 43 monkeys that escaped a research facility in South Carolina. Yeah, basically. That's where
like
we're at.
That's like 28 days later.
Can you send me
Totally.
that
Or 12
article?
monkeys.
Or
Yeah.
tell me what that article is called?
I'll send it to you. It is an independent article on the 43 monkeys that escaped South Carolina. Escaped monkeys is probably all you need for that one, but I sent you the link. I don't know. I mean, it seems pretty crazy, but 12 Monkeys is the movie, right? 12 Monkeys is the one where a Brad Pitt insane trust fund student hears that
Can I just
plan.
read one sentence from that article?
Sure.
So it says animal rights group point out that the species has been subjected, so these primates, to studies on vaccines, organ transplants, and the impact of separating infants from mothers.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time, many in the scientific community, and everyone listen closely, will tell you just how vital their research is to fighting AIDS, polio, and COVID-19.
Wow, that's fun. So you know the 12 Monkeys movie is about a time traveler who's sent back in time to stop the virus that is essentially this, super virus. Yeah, apocalyptic virus, that is created in a lab and released. The 12 Monkeys, anarcho eco terrorist group that are like everything from the most elite Rockefeller trust fund kid Brad Pitt character all the way to the lady who is in charge of the CDC, and she's the one who really orchestrates it. At the end of the movie, you find out. Yeah, 12 Monkeys. Man.
Spoilers. Spoiler alert.
Well, I feel like have you seen 12 Monkeys? Not everyone's seen 12 Monkeys because it's like Terry Gilliam, 1995. It's a pretty old movie at this point.
Oh
I
man,
don't think I've seen that one, but I feel like I've seen 3 or 4 other movies that in totality like have the same storyline.
Do you guys
12
think
Monkeys is really important to watch because the Monty Python, Terry Gilliam created it. I strongly recommend it. Sorry.
Do you guys think we have enough movies? Like, because I fear that
Yes,
we're
do.
gonna reach like an infinite jest state where it's like we're just gonna watch.
We
one
just need
movie.
AI.
We're just gonna watch one movie and it's gonna be different every single time or every single
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, AI. So like we're at the point like the same with music. Like so now with the 5090 and the 5000 series GPUs and all the things that are coming next, like even the M4, it's going to be easier to build arrays for video generation and for video training. And Brian Ramel, hold on. Brian Ramel, who is doing classical.
I don't know about video, but there's some interesting efficiency changes in terms of actually getting stuff to run effectively on GPUs. So there may even be efficiency-wise upgrades coming up.
This is true too. Like people ourselves are going to be able to do this stuff, but Brian's doing this incredible work where he's got like millions of video cassettes and films and all these things, and he's been generating new work with it. Where's the one that he had earlier that was so cool? Yeah, he's got like this stuff like here, like high school footage from 1989 and everything. So he's basically a video archaeologist and archivist, but he's become one de facto because it's not his original goal as a computer scientist. But with all of this technology, we're going to end up at a point where you can generate any kind of media instantaneously, and you'll have live movies being made all the time. So anytime you want a story, you'll just be able to take that story and remake it with new characters. I mean, this is again the acceleration of storytelling arc too, because at that point you'll never be stuck hearing a story. When people say, "Oh, this doesn't relate to me," then you can just have yourself be in the story. Or if it relates to you too much, then you can have it be about pigeon speaking reggaeton Brazilians. I don't know, whatever.
I think when you integrate this technology with like in a VR space, I don't know, pretty soon you're going to be able to literally immerse yourself in actual historical events, I guess, as if you were there. That should be fun. Like, just recreate like whole
According
environments.
to the conspiracy research, people could already do that with what they call the chronovisor, whether it is a real thing or not. But
Yeah,
all
what do you
those
think about
individuals
that?
claim they're already doing that.
The
That's even
chronovisor.
official.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
alleged
really?
existing one-time machine. The term goes to Francois Brune, author of several books, paranormal, religious. What's the deal with the chronovisor? A Jesuit Catholic priest. CRT described past events that could be viewed. Interesting. Time
probably-
viewer.
I feel like that's more of a remote viewing kind of deal.
This, Tesla talked about machines that could read your mind and project what your mind was seeing, and now we have the AI to do it. I don't know. It seems like this is pretty close to what we talked about earlier with sitting there in the time machine. So, like Keenan was saying, being able to see time, like in Lucy, chronovisor. How much of this do you really feel like at the end of the day, are you going to want to, if you can't figure it out through training, are you going to like give up and say, okay, I want that tech upgrade. I'm going to want that ability to do it with the Neuralink. Or do you feel like if you couldn't have figured it out with your mind that you're probably over it in this generation?
I think it's not up to me. It's almost like it just kind of happens because I never sought any of it. I never even conceived of any of this stuff. It just sort of like falling into it. So who knows? Maybe it's beyond anyone's control. All I can do is really talk about it. That's all I can do is just talk about it.
Do you feel like we're headed towards the complete destruction of anything, or is that too pessimistic? Like when I thought about like the 12 Monkeys thing, I feel like we're maybe already past the major destruction. Like maybe like we thought there was going to be this epic war, but actually it was just a sort of mist that we were driving through, and it was just that excuse in order to like rebuild, and we're already seeing like rebuild happening. Or am I
I
being
think
optimistic?
the idea was it's both, right? And it's just a matter of which reality is your consciousness going to be tuned to. Now, like normally, I think like if everyone's pineal gland is like sufficiently calcified across the board, that frequency isn't really shifting. It's pretty stable collectively. But then like once that starts cracking, and like the frequencies start diverging, it's gonna start manifesting at first as like political polarity, and then eventually it's gonna be full blown, like where it's just gonna be like a matter of consciousness, like reality being downstream from consciousness. And it's like, yes, both of you exist, one where you went through the destruction of the world, and one where you just drove through the mist, and like you went on to, I guess, ideally better things. Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, your soul's being saved or not. It's like, which reality did you end up ultimately tuned to? And if life is looking good, if you're optimistic, if you're grateful, like chances are things are probably going to work out.
Andrew made it. What's up, bro?
What's up? I know it's like the last quarter or whatever.
Glad to have
15.
you, brother.
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
I was on a motorcycle. I have a theory that a lot of my heavy metal and sort of just punk or just counterculture tattoos are actually these sigils that are a magnet for negative energy. So crazy people love to bother me and steal my stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Is that in the motorcycle or more?
Oh, my motorcycle. I mean, I just there's I don't know.
That's pretty crazy that someone stole your motorcycle.
I know.
It's insane.
I thought it made it so ugly that no one would want to steal it, but I guess they were just like, this resonates, and we're motivated enough to push it like on foot, and it's not light.
Yeah, it sucks. Do you think that because of that you're going to be changing some of the energy you put out or some of the symbols that you associate yourself with?
Oh man, it's heavy shit.
I have been wanting to. It's on my list. I have like an inverted pentagram with a goat skull tattooed above my root chakra.
Yeah.
So, and I've been wanting to get it lasered off for the past 5 years. but it just my wallet and
You could turn it into a C60 carbon molecule, you know.
I did catch that part of it. That part of when I was at work. Yeah, no, there's carbon could be anything. It's so fluid. It's almost like,
Although just to let you know, because generally, ideally, you can just redefine it yourself. And also, I think it's kind of cool that you have the most, extreme symbolism if we take an arbitrary scale of it. But just to let you know, also carbon, from what I understand, is 6 electrons, 6 protons to 6 neutrons, right? So just, if you really want to stay clear of it, maybe
it's
carbon
perfect in
isn't
every
best either.
way.
I'm not sure.
I don't think there's anything
But,
wrong with
yeah.
666 is the point. Like, it doesn't say it's an evil number.
No,
anywhere.
I wouldn't necessarily say something is wrong, with the symbolism you described. But of course, in terms of a traditional, Christian view or whatever, it would be like, oh.
but
Well, they're idiots. Like the thing is, it's the Azazel
that's the
scapegoat.
other problem,
The scapegoat is like in the
that's a good point. Yeah.
Like, I mean, people be like, oh well, like Christians, like that. They'll say that the thing about Lucifer, the light bearer. I saw this comment earlier. I think someone brought up the light. Not to compare you with the old people, but someone, just as another point, someone brought up the light bearer. Like someone said the Catholics worship the light bearer. Well, if you look at it, the morning star and the bright morning star, I think at some point we talked about this even, like Lucifer and Christ, there's a huge correlation there. Like either they are brothers or even more, bro, like they are the same thing. Like into some traditions, there isn't a solid Lucifer as a definition. There's a Satan, there's a serpent, there's an accuser. There's a lot of these characters that are not one thing. So then there's Jews that said, okay, well, these amalgamated from the Babylonian exile into a character that becomes the dragon because it's inferred that the serpent lost its wings and body. It's essentially, it was a dragon. And in Revelation, it's like revealed that's what it was. It was the dragon. But this is like not Isaiah. And Isaiah is saying phosphore, or the morning star. So morning star to Venus is different than the bright morning star, which is Mercury. I think maybe it's the opposite. Venus is the bright morning star and Mercury is the messenger. But still, that's where they get that idea of dualism. And then Lucifer being Lucifer of Cagliari. All of that. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the Lucifer archetype if it's the accuser. And weirder would be if you're a Marcion Christian, you would say it's like the same thing. Because it's God versus, like, for the Marcion Christians, the original Christian canon church, it was that there's two gods. Like, there's the evil, mean God that's jealous and angry that we've all read about. And then there's this, like, loving God, which is so freaking different that, either we just didn't understand God, which we really should talk about then, because then what do we do with all the old books that we misunderstood God in? Or there's like, it's just a different character. We weren't wrong. And like, that's like, I think the funnier way to do it, but probably it's that there's, maybe there is something to that you're not actually covered in evil symbols, but that we're taught to reject truth and reject Christ. And Christians are taught to reject Christ, which is why Christians are the most freaked out by the scapegoat symbol for Christ that you're wearing.
Well, but here's the thing with like consciousness and its effect on each other, and distilling these huge ideas into symbols that have sort of like a dual. They could be perceived in multiple ways, but there are like the ones that I have are polarizing as far as perception. So. I am subjecting myself to that polarity of perception, and since we're co-creating reality together, the true meaning of a symbol doesn't really matter when you have, this population that perceives it this way and this population that perceives it another way. Much like hooked crosses or even regular crosses. It's our perception as individuals and also at a group level kind of do have it affects the way that matter arranges itself.
Right. So this may be back to that thought we had earlier about like cathedrals versus like strip malls, and good music, more intellectual music or arranged music versus like less melodic music. Do you feel that way about like the symbols on your body?
That's really, really interesting because, they have that experiment with playing classical music for plants, and it could have been the plants didn't like it, or the people listening to the music didn't like it and projected it onto the plants. If you had a bunch of who were radiating love for these particular sequences of notes and tones, maybe the plants would have grown in a different way. I don't know. It could be a biased experiment.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Like you have to be super enthusiastic, and people miss that because it's all tied together. That's like the weather and your feelings kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I can't give the exact reference, but I also heard it with these experiments, because often then they say, oh, classical music is great, but hard rock is really bad, right? But supposedly even here, it really depends on what the individual listening actually enjoys. Just makes sense, right? And that will then give the effect accordingly, whether they enjoy the particular music or not.
Yeah, for sure. I think because it kind of ties into that Emoto water experiments, and with that they used words, and understanding that is a little bit less left open for interpretation. You can't. We all have such a relationship with language that if you say like, "You're the most,"
it's like hard coded, yeah.
You completely disgust me. Like, there's very few ways that my brain could like invert those things, unless I'm super paranoid or something, but generally speaking, language, I think, kind of transcends some of the dual nature of perception, which kind of is messed up when you get into things like sarcasm, where you're sort of like intentionally saying the opposite of what you mean, and either someone gets it or they don't. But what effect does that have?
Totally. Yeah, I realize that often it doesn't have a positive effect. Like if you're in a relationship and you're constantly like trying to be loving through sarcasm, saying things like, it can be cute for a while, and I don't know, maybe it's a decent outlet when you have like actual cathartic need to like love someone while you're still criticizing. But I think that it still embeds that negative archetype, and so it's better still. It's weird, but it's like, if to be pure is still better.
Funny that you bring up the catharsis through negativity, because famous roast comic Tony Hinchcliffe sort of came under fire, and he's made a career of being critical in a humorous way, and he's built a community around that. Him and all of his closest friends say some of the darkest things about each other.
Yeah.
For them,
and they have a show about criticizing like terrible comics.
Here's the thing, like I think I have like mixed feelings about stand-up comedy in general. I mean, yeah, there's an art to it, but it's like, I think like when you're really obsessed with that shit, because ultimately when I look at like stand-up comedy objectively, it really functions the best as like a cultural weapon, like in cultural warfare. Like when you're in just the wrong political climate, you use stand-up comedy to like really like act as a pressure valve. Or when there's just some like real like gnarly stuff going on in culture and politics, you need a stand-up comedian to just like poke fun at it, to like let people know. But beyond that, like if you just let that like seep into your entire being, you're just gonna be like just crappy to be around. Like one of those people that are overly cynical. And I know this because I used to be that way. Like I used to be overly cynical, and it's just nothing good comes from it. Sometimes I dabble. Yeah,
Hollywood and cocaine accelerated the vaudeville comedy, stand-up comedy, and the idea of like soundbite communication, like that things should be funny. And it's weird. It's totally weird. Like to be raised in that as well, and to understand that that's not what the world's like, is really bizarre, because it seems like such a quick, obvious way to communicate, but comedy is really like graffiti. Like it's some kind of ancient thing that was done by like even like dramatists originally. You could be doing like a theater bit for somebody, but being a debating philosopher, like wandering around, was way better and more common, because you didn't have to have everything set up, and you could just sort of like manipulate. Hey, what's up, Steve? That's great. Namaste. I appreciate that. Actually, I wanted to play a song for you guys. I don't know if I'm going to play the whole one, but here it goes. So I was flying.
It's just
and I was,
I'm not getting anything. Are you guys?
Yeah.
Between nanotechnology and chocolate, there's a little place called Princeton, just far away. Above Monterey and Montreal, below the Nicholson wall. About as far from Canada and Germany as you can get.
it was cool because all I had to do is like I'm flying and I see the names on the map and I just wrote them all down and then like you got your little song there. I don't know.
It's like Billy Joel.
Yeah, but I tried it again because I was like, it needs to be a little bit more like cold. So, and then it was like,
Very 80s.
This is the music the Weeknd wishes he made.
Nice.
right? Yeah, I feel good about that. Well, it's about 2 hours deep. Is there anything else you guys wanted to like? I want to get final words. I like final words. How about that? We'll do a final word. 1, 2. Andrew first.
Anything that's not within your power just shouldn't even be on your radar anymore. Yeah, if you can't have a hand in it, keep your mind out of it.
I like that. That's a pretty good one. Raph, you want to do one?
Yeah, and then just know where you can have your hand in and where you can't.
That sounded dirty.
Oh man, I got one.
Okay, Chris.
I would say you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond.
Yeah, that's true. I would say try not to respond through reaction, but to respond with stillness and then to choose your own action. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with Raph. We're going to do another show, and then we'll do some early birds because I think this is basically, it's all coming together in terms of space-time continuum. But thank you for being here. We love you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks, y'all.
There's philosophy